We are speaking with Gregg. He is from ATP. He's a Governmental Relations Director
of the Association of Texas Professional Educators.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are y'all today?
Pretty good. So how much more of the session is there?
We're just over halfway through.
At what point do you need B12 shots from your doctor just to get through it?
Started last week.
Really?
Oh, wow.
You're not having one of those tables. Never mind.
Well, we have Mr. Gregg with us today because today the Senate passed a bill that allows high school students who don't pass STAAR tests or end of the course tests to graduate. So he's here to talk to us a little bit more about that.
So let's start at the beginning, if we could, for the parents who just don't know what the STAAR. What is the STAAR test?
The STAAR test is the state-required assessment test that all students must take in grades 3 through 8, and then 5 tests in high school, which are called end-of-course tests.
And when did those start?
They're generally given starting around in April, and they usually go for most of the month of April, depending upon what grade the child is in.
Is this sort of, I think in some European countries, or maybe it's all of them, you have to pass a test to get out of school?
In Texas, we have had an exit test since about, I'm going to say the late 90s. All students have been required to pass an exit test in order to receive a high school diploma.
Okay. Is this a good thing or a bad thing according to ATPE?
This bill is a good thing because what it does is it allows a student who has trouble passing that one test on that one day the ability to show that they have the academic rigor to be able to pass high school and receive a diploma.
So say even if they get, I doubt this is likely, but say they ace all of their courses during the high school year, but they fail these STAAR tests or these end-of-the-course tests, they don't graduate. But now this bill changes that.
That is that's correct. It puts in place an alternative method for students that are having trouble passing those tests. So what would happen is the student then would have to put together basically a portfolio of the work that they've done. So they would have to, first of all, there would be a committee of the principal, the counselor, a teacher, and the student's parent. And that committee then would look at this information to see if the child meets all of the benchmarks. So the student, it's much easier to pass the test than to go through this process.
Mm-hmm.
But if the student has average grades of a 70 and they have a GPA of 2.0 and they score a certain score on another test called the Texas Success Initiative, which is a test you take before you go to college, if they score high enough on that and the student has done some things that are like taking AP courses, credit courses, things like that. If they can show that they've done all these things and they've been successful throughout their career, then this grade placement committee would have to vote unanimously, and then the student would be able to graduate and get a high school diploma.
Do you know why? Is it known why kids don't do
or don't test well?
Don't do well on tests.
Well,
aside from not knowing the material,
there are many reasons that we're told and that we know about. But the truth of the matter is some people just aren't good on standardized tests. They may be the hardest workers you've ever seen. They may be able to do all kinds of things or learn skills. But when it comes down to that one day, that's just not their forte. And up to now, we haven't let those people graduate. And if you take away a high school diploma from a student these days, you're really hampering their ability to be successful in life.
I remember taking those tests, and it can be very stressful. I mean, you think so much about you have to pass. When I was in high school, you had to pass this test in order to graduate.
That's correct.
I guess I can understand.
So I want to make sure I understand. This is passed both houses of the legislature, and now goes to the governor?
No, sir. This is only passed the Senate at this point, and will have to go through the House of Representatives still.
How likely is this to pass?
I think it's pretty likely. This legislature last session reduced high-stakes testing in high school from 15 to 5 tests. And I think that they're looking for ways to help students carve out their own path in high school. And if they can show that they're going to be successful, but they can't pass that test, then I think they should be given this chance. And I think that the House of Representatives will most likely pass this bill.
It goes to the House Education Committee, I'm guessing?
Yes, sir.
I'm sure you've polled the members to see what they think.
We haven't been over into that committee to talk about this bill yet, but we will be soon. But it passed the Senate in an overwhelming majority, and I believe that the same will happen in the House.
Is there any kind of opposition to it that's come up?
There are those that believe that testing should be the end-all of everything.
Are these the test salesmen?
What we've always said is, look, testing is important, but it should be used diagnostically. And when you put all these high stakes on the test, both for the school and the student, you really sort of pervert the system of education away from what it's intended to do. There are those folks out there, big business groups like the Texas Association of Business and some chambers of commerce, who believe that we should force everyone to pass a test in order to pass high school. But I think that the majority of parents these days really don't believe in that, and many of them don't even trust that the test is testing the right thing.
So the Texas Association of Business, are they neutral on this, or?
I didn't look at the record, but they are generally one of the groups that believe that we should test everybody as much as possible.
Okay. No, because when I first read the headline, I took it right away as if you don't pass this test, you still get a chance to graduate no matter how your grades were or what they were throughout your senior year or your high school career. But now I know that that's not the case. So you have to show consistency of getting good grades before you take this test in order, I guess, to still graduate if you don't pass.
Yeah, this is a more difficult way to show your proficiency than to be able to pass the test. It's not an easy way out at all, and it certainly is not a way to let students' academic performance not matter. It's not that at all. It's actually more difficult than just passing the test and moving on.
Let me ask a question you may not be able to answer, but back in the dark ages, the dim mists of time, people took the Iowa standardized test. They didn't have these battery of tests to get out, whether they're good or bad. Then Perot comes along, Mr. Perot, and the legislature put in tools to measure progress, to make sure the money was being spent, that they were sending districts were being spent properly. And it seems to me it snowballed from there. My perception is there's been all these tests added on to them. And everybody
no doubt about it. Texas, of course, started that process.
Yeah.
We became the actual model for No Child Left Behind, the federal legislation that requires testing.
Well, the idea was to keep districts accountable, but now everyone complains that they spend too much time testing and the kids are not learning; they're just learning the test.
Yeah.
What's ATPE think about all that?
Absolutely, we would like to see testing become diagnostic. We want to keep a state achievement test and continue to make sure that students are learning what they're supposed to learn and being taught the way they're supposed to be taught, but to then put everything, both the teacher's job, the school, the student, based on that one test on that one day is really perverting the system. And you asked why testing has grown so much. I'll tell you why. Big business.
Yeah.
The state spends $459 million with Pearson Testing Company in order to develop and grade these tests.
$459 million?
That's correct.
That's
that's their contract.
That's the add-on to Texas to Kyle Field at A&M.
That's correct.
And Pearson, is that related to
we're talking about big, huge business. Now, if you take that and you go nationwide with it, imagine the amounts of money that testing companies are able to make every time the law changes and we have to add a new test or bring another child up. This has really become a lot more about making profit for some companies than it is about educating students.
I remember being in high school and school starting in August, and we were already trying to prepare for our end-of-the-year test in April, and it was the beginning of the year.
Does Pearson give money to all legislators, or do they?
I don't know that much about their lobbying or how they do their business, but I do know that their business has absolutely gone out the door since No Child Left Behind started, because they have the biggest contracts in all the biggest states.
Well, one more question, indulge me, the larger scene. There's been a move to get rid of No Child Left Behind. I don't know what the political orientation is of the people who want it. I just know there's been ideas to get rid of it. If that were to happen, what would happen to all the testing?
Then it would be back up to the states the way that it should be, and states would then be allowed to do like we were already doing before this came along, and measure their students on what they think they should measure them on, and make sure that their schools are held accountable at the state level and the local level. The federal government has no business whatsoever being in this business. The Bush administration took this law up there to Congress when they went up there, and they passed it. and it has done nothing that I have ever seen to help a child in the state of Texas. Nothing.
Well, I guess we better leave it there. But thank you for your time, Mr. Gregg. We
Thank you so
greatly
much.
appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for letting us talk.
Yes, sir.